Good afternoon. Welcome to Coastal Carolina University. Thank you for your patience as we adjust the schedule. Some of the programs and events have been so enriching that folks have wanted to keep talking, and we want to balance that desire against the desire to kind of stay on schedule. So thank you for patience as we start this session a little bit late. My name is Dan Ennis, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Dean of Humanities and Fine Arts here at Coastal Carolina University. And I'm so pleased that we are able to host both this particular session and this entire conference, which has been in the making for quite a while, the work of many hands. I want to particularly make sure I acknowledge the terrific work of the director of the Joyner Institute for Gullah and African Diaspora Studies, Eric Crawford. I don't see him, but he may be running around. Is he here? There we go, Eric. This has been his project, and he's done a beautiful job pulling it together, and I'm so proud to be your colleague, Eric. Thank you so much. I also want to extend my welcome on behalf of the President of Coastal Carolina, Dr. Dave DeCenzo, and our Provost, Dr. Ralph Byington. They both send their greetings, and they've been supportive of both the Joyner Institute in particular and this event as well. So we're so glad that they provided the institutional support that made this conference and event possible. I've been asked to provide a little bit of context, and this ask was given to me by Ali Crandall, who's the director of the Athenaeum Press here at Coastal Carolina. And Eric and Ali got together and devised and put together a grant proposal that's going to be transformative for this institution, for the Joyner Institute, and for Gullah Geechee studies across the country and diaspora studies. So I've been asked to give you a little bit of context for that grant and our project before I hand it over to the main speakers today. We at Coastal Carolina were thrilled to accept the National Archives Access and Historic Records Grant to digitize and interpret plantation records, films, and oral histories from up and down the South Carolina coast. So Coastal Carolina University's project partners include the Library of Congress, the Association for Cultural Equity, and the South Carolina Historical Society. And we're so excited to be able to create access to these historic records and reintroduce them to the communities from which they originate. And there are better people than me who can describe the process whereby important records and important recordings were made and then somehow became inaccessible to the very people whose heritage was being recorded and documented. And this grant is designed to remedy that injustice. In our case, we'll be working with the collections centered on St. Helena Island, Johns Island, and Sandy Island, and the Merle Inlet communities. So we're excited to use this conference as a starting point for collaboration with communities and scholars on interpreting these collections and making them more accessible to those doing academic and personal research. So this project, this National Archive project, in conjunction with the Joyner Institute and the Athenaeum Press under the leadership of Dr. Crawford and Director Crandall, will begin this May and continue through the spring of 2021. So if you hear anything today, or if you hear anything in the course of this entire conference, and you believe that you can contribute to this project, or you have insight that you want to share with our project directors, they're both here today. They're both prominent as part of this conference, and we hope that you'll reach out, because the only way that we can really make this access worthwhile is to hear from people who have been shut out from this important cultural heritage. So we're excited to be partners in that program, and that's our context for this event. But the main reason you're here is not to hear me talk about our little part of a much larger project, but you're here to be part of the Repatriation program and to introduce that and to lead this session. I'm pleased to introduce one of the terrific additions to Gullah Geechee Heritage Studies and an important leader in this area, Heather Hodges, Executive Director of the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor Commission. Heather.
Good afternoon, everyone. The important purpose of repatriation is to return cultural heritage to its owners and heirs. In this case, the cultural heritage is a series of recordings that the famed folklorist and musicologist John Lomax made in 1936 of sermons, hymns, spirituals, and shouts sung in the Gullah Geechee community of Murrells Inlet, which is located about 20 miles from where we sit today. In the backyard of folklorist Genevieve Chandler, Mr. Lomax recorded songs performed by Zachy Knox, the Reverend Aaron Pinnacle, Hagar Brown, and Lily Knox. These recordings demonstrate an important point, that of all African American cultures in the United States, the lifeways, folk customs, oral history, literature, crafts, arts, music, and foodways of the Gullah Geechee people show the strongest continuities with the indigenous cultures of Africa and connections to other cultures of the African diaspora. The mural's inlet audio recordings provide rare examples of highly emotional singing, hand clapping, and improvisation that were retained from their Gullah Geechee singers' collective West and Central African ancestry and perfected in plantation praise houses and freedmen's churches. It represents a foundational American musical tradition that influenced a range of genres, from blues to jazz to rock and roll. I am so pleased that you all can be with us today to welcome home these important recordings and this important Gullah Geechee heritage. Today we are honored to be joined by many special guests. From the Association for Cultural Equity, we are joined by its president and the granddaughter of John Lomax, Anna Lomax Wood. We're also joined by Jorge Arevalo Mateus, the executive director. The association was founded by the son of John Lomax, someone you may have heard of named Alan Lomax, and its mission is to stimulate cultural equity through preservation, research, and dissemination of the world's traditional music, and to reconnect people and communities with their creative heritage. We also have with us from the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., Kimberly Bugg, the Chief of Humanities and Social Sciences, and Todd Harvey, Curator of the Lomax Collection at the Library of Congress. And representing us locally is Mr. Dwight Mickenville from the Georgetown County Library. Most importantly, we are particularly thrilled that with us this afternoon are also members of the Knox family, two of the singers and community members who are featured most prominently in the Murals Inlet recordings. They're sitting right here in the center of the auditorium, so please join me in welcoming them and all of our guests. And we'll begin our program today with remarks from Anna Lomax Wood.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much, Heather. Thank you so much. I also want to mention that we have here on the panel Kiki Akipati-Smith, who is the Managing Director of the Association for Cultural Equity. I am an anthropologist, cultural anthropologist by training, but I have worked as a public folklorist, and I have a good big dose of ethnomusicology as well. And I've been guiding the Association for Cultural Equity, which is a research and dissemination center established by my father, Alan Lomax, in 1983, within the purview of CUNY, the City University of New York, but not of it, independent. And I have been doing this for about 20-some years. Just to give you a bit of background, we began by trying to sort out this huge archive. Alan Lomax is no longer able to participate, and went from that to digitizing all of the media within it, photographs, the films and videos, and the large sound archive. And with that being done, we thought, well, what are we going to do with it? This has to have some meaning other than sitting there. And so we immediately decided to disseminate it on the internet as much as possible. So we built a website for that purpose. And we started with very short excerpts, but since people seemed to like it and not protest, we just added the entire, all of the recordings on the website, the whole interviews and songs and so on. And then in 2004, I think it was, the Center for Black Music Research its founder contacted me and said, could we have your whole Caribbean collection? We would like to establish a center for Black music research in St. Thomas. And I said, of course. And so that started out our repatriation, our program of physical repatriation, which has gone on, I guess now it's almost 15 years. And at first, we've been learning as we go along. And I'll get back to that later, but always we have maintained a relationship with people from the Columbia College, where the Center for Black Music Research was housed, and Rosita Sands, who is on our board, and a professor and dean at the college, has been working with us a lot in the Caribbean repatriations. So I want to mention that my grandfather, John A. Lomax, who was born in 1869, I just can't really process that my grandfather was born so long ago, but he was my grandfather, and he grew up, you can read about him if you are interested, but he grew up listening to cowboy songs, and literally cowboy songs on the Chisholm Trail, and he became enraptured of them. And he also had a friend on his father's little farm in West Texas and East Texas, who was African American, and it was like a work farm. The kids had to work from the age of 7 or whatever, whenever they could start doing something. And this young man was hired as a hired hand, and they became very fast friends because John learned from him so many Black African American songs and game songs and rhymes and riddles and dances and so on. And that's where he learned his love of folklore. And he, then for many vicissitudes, unfortunately, his dear friend was probably murdered after leaving the employ of Lomax's, along with John Lomax, who went off to try to go to college. He barely had any schooling, just reading one book, 1 or 2 books in the family, the Bible and Pilgrim's Progress. So, and he had taught Nat how to read as well. So anyway, they, many vicissitudes and so on in his life. This was around it must have been still in the 19th century. And finally, he got an education, went to the university, and worked as a registrar at the University of Texas. And during this time, he kept recording cowboy songs and different things, but he helped to form the Texas Folklore Society, he and 2 others. And in 1916, you have to realize this man who was, a Southerner. His father had been born in Mississippi. It was a real thing. He made an appeal to his colleagues in the first issue of the journal to document the treasures of folklore that existed amongst the African American people and the Mexican American people in the state. He said there are just untold treasures of beauty, and this should be documented. And so you get a sense of his interest, his passion. So, and I think it was in 1931 or so, just at the end of the Depression, he went to the Library of Congress and proposed to them that to do a survey of African American music, mostly secular, but not entirely. And they exceeded, and they gave him, I think, a salary of $100 a year, and equipment and some expenses. And from there, this is what he did for the rest of his life. He went all around to the different states, and he went sometimes alone, sometimes with his second wife, and he was also accompanied by Leadbelly, Hugh D. Ledbetter, who was someone who he and his son Alan had met in the penitentiary at Louisiana. And so he was a man who adored, literally, he loved the music. He had a very fine sense of aesthetics and sensitivity to the emotional and aesthetic qualities of the music. And he loved the people as well, and he would go back to see them driving long distance and so on. He was not a liberal, he was not a progressive, unfortunately. He did not believe in desegregation, which was just becoming an issue at the point of when he started doing this work. And, but he was a cultural progressive, at least. And he did this service, and he did it with humility and respect for the music and for the people that he recorded and interviewed. So just to wind down my remarks, I want to say that getting back to the original theme of what we were doing at the Association for Cultural Equity with regard to repatriation, we have been learning, and it just never has felt right to me to go and say, well, here's a disc or whatever, and this is yours and that's that. Especially to large organizations, because sometimes they just get lost. I don't think this will happen here. This is the most wonderful, I think, conference and gathering of minds and people on a very, very important topics that are just, it's so heartening to me to see this and to be here. And I consider it a great honor to have been invited, and I speak on behalf of my colleagues at ACE. I feel that we need to do more in repatriating, in trying to find a way to make sure that the people who created the culture are full participants in that, and have their descendants, and have the material in their hands, and are able to know how to access it without any problems. This is of the utmost importance, and also see the possibilities of what could be done with this material, educationally and in many other ways, so that the possibilities are really boundless. And so I'm hoping that something like that will happen here, and we're starting this relationship, and I thank you all for having us.
Good afternoon. My name is Jorge Arevalo Mateos. It's a pleasure to be here. I also want to echo Anna's congratulations to Coastal Carolina and to Professor Crawford for this inaugural conference. I keep my remarks as brief as I can. I always write it down, so bear with me. I kind of call this "the tradition will not allow it." And although that sounds rather austere, I borrow this statement from the Louisiana blues musician Buddy Guy, who was recently described as one of those aging souls who find themselves the last fluent speaker of an obscure regional language. I'm glad that this conference is proving this complete to be inaccurate about Gullah Geechee culture. The weight of carrying a tradition, whether music, dance, language, or folklore, is not easily borne. And when that tradition is wrapped in its sermons, his spirituals, ring shouts, deeply felt faith-based practices that reach into religious beliefs, and further back than anyone can remember, it should come as no surprise that these cultural expressions are central to recuperation, survival, and the very renewal of a culture's soul. In Melodies and Memories, John Avery Lomax's final chapter from Adventures of a Ballad Hunter, he reminisces on the years between 1933 and 1939, when he and his wife Ruby Terrell collected songs on behalf of the Archive of American Folk Songs for the Library of Congress. After expressing a wish to have included a chapter on, quote, Negro blues, end quote, he makes it abundantly clear, quote, then I should have liked to write a chapter about Mrs. Genevieve Chandler, Wilcox Chandler of Morell's Inlet, whose back door opens on a bay in South Carolina near Sandy Island. On our many visits, her cook, Lily Knox, sang many beautiful spirituals. Heaven is a beautiful place, being one of our favorites. Mom Hager was there, and the Reverend Aaron Pinnacle, and many others. John Avery adds, they sang for me because they loved Mrs. Chandler, end quote. So here we are today to honor Gullah Geechee culture, and by returning these recordings and films, repatriate them to the people. If my list of people is not complete, my apologies, but I would like to just repeat the names of some of the people. Hagar Brown, Lily Knox, Minnie Knox, Uncle Cato Singleton, Professor Collins, Mattie Brown Collins, Mrs. Joseph A. Gaines, Gilbert Lee, Simon Small, Reverend Aaron Pinnacle, Hannah Basilian, Mitty Doctor, Lathea Tucker, Francis Godson, Jenny Piat, Drew Howard, Viola Brown, Constant Brown, Otto Washington Brown, Annabella Corin Sindab, Minnie Floyd, Annie Holmes, and all the congregants and choristers from Heaven's Gate Methodist Church, as well as the Moving Star Hall Singers and the Wesley United Methodist Church on Johns Island. I thank you for carrying the weight and for allowing the Association for Cultural Equity to participate in this repatriation.
Please join me in welcoming to the stage vocalist Hannah Batley and guitarist Will Ness, who will perform I'm Troubled All About My Soul in honor of the memory of Mrs. Lily Knox.
Troubled all about my soul. strikes Zion, he won't be worried no more. Wonder where my sister, wonder where she's gone. Somewhere sitting in the kingdom, she won't be worried no more. Lord, I'm troubled, troubled, troubled all about my soul. Just as soon as my feet strike Zion, I won't be troubled no more. Wonder where my brother, wonder where he's gone. Somewhere sitting in the kingdom, he won't be troubled no more. Lord, I'm troubled, troubled, troubled all about my soul. Just as soon as my feet strike Zion, I won't be troubled no more. Just as soon as my feet strike Zion, I won't be troubled no more. Just as soon as my feet strike Zion, I won't be troubled no more.
Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Kimberly Budd and Todd Harvey from the Library of Congress, and they're going to share with us the steps they are taking to increase accessibility to the folk life collections at the Library of Congress.
Good afternoon. So I'm really just going to talk about access as a term for collaboration. Being a little bit of an educator, I don't see access as a one-way street. I kind of see it as a conversation between the researcher and the collection. So I'll be talking about access in terms of collaboration. So there are many things at the Library of Congress that anyone can access remotely and in person, but it begins with kind of this collaboration between you and the collection. So I'm gonna just go a little bit into what the Library of Congress is and who we are. We are the chief steward of American history, and part of that is this Gullah Geechee history that is represented in the collection, but can be represented more. The library is broken down into collections. So there's the American Folklife collection, there's the music collection, there's the Asian collection, there's the prints and photographs, there is the researcher and reference collection. So it's broken down according to collections. And we primarily do two things. So we share the collection, so we provide access, and we steward the collection. So we try to grab onto every part of American history and preserve it in one space. So we are continuously working on both of those things simultaneously. One of our biggest things that I'm very proud of is that beyond all of the things that we have almost 2 million items in all languages. Our subject matter experts, perhaps the biggest resource at the Library of Congress is just the knowledge of the people who work there. There's about 3,200 people who work there, but almost everyone has their own very specific area of expertise. And in the Researcher and Reference Services Division, which I oversee, so I'm pretty much the head of the main reading room, we really focus on kind of general. So we are the conduit to all of the specific people. So when you come there, or if you engage us on our website and you want to know where to get started, I don't really know, I'm not sure, we're the people who usually answer that question and get you pointed to where you want to be. A huge part of that is our genealogy collection. Our genealogy collection is one of the Library of Congress's most frequently used collection. It's very popular. People love to see themselves in this space, and typically they come asking questions. Well, my grandfather, there's this story that's floating around in my family. My grandfather said one time he wrote a poem, and I want to see if it's in the book here, or he had a conversation with this person, and I found the picture, but I don't know where the picture originated from. So we do all of those kind of very personal experience searches. And so most of those happen within my purview. But specific to this community, we have a few people who are really good. And Ahmed Johnson is our genealogist, and he is highly regarded for what he knows and who he has helped. And then I've listed a few other people. But again, it's a conversation, right? Ask us a question, and we will try to point you in the right direction. And I really want to make sure people understand that, you know, we are accessible. We aren't just this mythical library that's just associated with Congress. That's not true. We are providing access for everyone, and we are hoping that everyone, you know, interacts with us and sees themselves at the Library of Congress. So this is just one. So this is Ahmed Johnson here. He is our African-American genealogist. He has worked on many large projects, but also small projects. So he is often, I know if you guys have heard of Henry Louis Gates, he has this show, Finding Your Roots. He often consults with Ahmed. He's asked him to be on the show, but Ahmed is camera shy. So, you know, he often gives those points. He's also collected a very famous, or infamous, if you will, African Americans family tradition. So there's this family called the Blackwell family. They trace their roots all the way back to their first slave descendant. And they did this very grassroots. So what they would do is you would come to the family reunion and you would write your name on this thing. And so every year at the family reunion, this thing came back out and you wrote your name and you wrote your name and you wrote your name. And then one of the people in their family, Miss Doswell, she was an educator. She decided to just do some research, and she got all the way back to her first descendant from on the slave ship, a woman named Alma. So what Miss Doswell did was, you know, every year she had been collecting these. So when everybody graduated from high school, any kind of, you know, special event or recital, you know, if I was one of her people, she would probably want the program for this event. She tells people to bring all of those kinds of things to the family reunion, and then she just collected them. So later in her life, the library, her family donated those things to the library. And so that's very grassroots. It's just what we do at our family reunions. I don't know about your family reunions, but we usually have a booklet, and we, you know, kind of keep our records. And so it's important that you know that those are important to your family, but you can also give those to a place like the Library of Congress to hold on for you, for your family to see, to preserve, and for other people to connect. So one of the things that we know particularly about being African American in this country is that it's a bit challenging to trace our roots, and so you kind of have to really, really dig deep and find, you know, connections that you didn't know existed in that way. So, you know, those are some smaller projects. We've worked with Ancestry.com to help build their database. So we try to be in a lot of different places. And we have Gullah Geechee information at the Library of Congress. We've pulled this together in a guide, which I hope can start as a starting point, a launching board for some deeper conversations about, you know, resources and discovery at the Library of Congress. You know, you can engage these things in Washington, D.C., which I recognize that Washington, D.C. is a bit of an expensive place to travel to with lots of security. And so access, for me, is about, you know, breaking down those borders, breaking down those barriers that stop you from engaging. So what's important to me is that you know that we can come to you. This website is one way that we can bring the information to you, but you can always reach out to us and say, hey, we want to figure out how to do that, but we can't bring our whole family there. Can you come to us? And that's one resource that we do offer. And very few people know about that. And so this guide is just the beginning. There's always room for more. And so, I'm hoping that you will see yourselves here, not just using our collection, but thinking about how you can, add your things to this collection. I have a bit of a personal story. So my great-grandfather, he was a self-described Geechee, and in my family, we have lots of stories about him. We have lots of cooking traditions, so he had a bit of an accent. So he left South Carolina and moved to this eastern shore of Virginia. So his accent was different than everyone else's. And so everyone in my family has these cute little sayings that he used to say, or words that he used to use. They have recipes, things that he would cook when it was his turn to cook on Saturday morning. And, they're very protective of that story. So they don't like to share those stories, right? I had a conversation with my grandmother one time like, we should write all this down. And she was like, for what? They don't need to know our business, right? But they do need to know. The story is being told. They're going to tell it anyway. I watched this episode of Anthony Bourdain, and he was in South Carolina talking about low country cooking and Gullah and Geechee dishes. And, you know, the first person he talked to was not a person of Gullah descent, right? So they're going to tell the story anyway. The story is going to be told. It's about whether or not you want to get in on the story. My grandmother was not convinced, but I hope other people will be convinced to not only come and access the information that we have at the Library of Congress, but also put your story there as well. And so I hope you will continue this conversation with me, person to person, on a personal level. You can, I put my email here, and you can email me, and you can just send an email directly to the Library of Congress and say, hey, I spoke to this woman named Kimberly, can you point me in a direction? That may take a little longer, but I'm there, and I'm hoping that we can continue to have this conversation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Harvey. I'm a curator at the American Folklife Center. American Folklife Center is a research center devoted to documentation and research of cultural heritage at the Library of Congress. It's wonderful to follow Kimberly. The library has great leadership, starting with Dr. Hayden, Carl Hayden, and it goes all the way down to the middle managers, and it's a really wonderful place to work, and I'm grateful every day I go there. I want to tell you about something. In 1926, in Darien, Georgia, a man named Henry Wiley sang into the microphone of a wax cylinder recorder operated by Robert Winslow Gordon. The song he sang was Come By Here, which became, of course, famous throughout the world as Kumbaya, and it's our understanding that that's the very first recording of that song, which makes it pretty special. A few years later, when Mr. Gordon became the first head of the new Archive of American Folk Song at the Library of Congress, he brought his wax cylinder collection with him and seeded that archive. Included in those materials were sea shanties from San Francisco, banjo music from the upland south from Ashland, and many recordings from the coast of South Carolina, Georgia, and other places. And for me, that makes a statement that when you include the voices of the ordinary people in the Library of Congress, and you include among those recordings from Darien, Georgia, you're saying that Gullah culture is one of the foundational cultures of the American patchwork. And I think that's a very important thing to note. We've continued in the American Folklife Center to document Gullah culture. We have recordings from the 1920s to the present, from St. Simon's Island to Murrells Inlet. And I want to give you 3 takeaways in my brief remarks. The first one, Library of Congress collections and American Folklife Center collections are your collections. This is your national library. We hold these materials in stewardship for you. And those collections are inexhaustible. You will not exhaust, you will not get to the bottom of Gullah collections at the Library of Congress, if for no other reason than we continue to create them and continue to acquire them. I promise you, you will not get to the bottom of them if you start digging. Second, the American Folklife Center, like the main reading room, is creating a guide to its Gullah Geechee collections. In the beautiful future, everything will be digitized and everything will be online, but it's not yet. And so the best thing that we can do at the moment is to describe this so that you can access information about the materials, and then in time we can get them to you in the ways that you find useful. The guide that we've created is, it's not yet published. It's in review, as they say, and we're going to circulate the URL to that through the networks that we're creating here, and that'll get to you soon enough. Third, if you want to know more about American Folklife Center collections, I will help you. I'm a person that you can contact directly and speak to, and I will help you to access those collections. There's a face, just like with Kimberly, there's a face that you can put to this material. It's a large organization, but I will help you with that. And I have business cards, and I'm very easy to find, and in the American Folklife Center website. So those are my 3 takeaways. Library, big, yours, inexhaustible. A guide to collections, up soon. Person you can talk to. If you can remember those 3 things, I'm very happy. I think it is good and right that the federal government and the Library of Congress representing the federal government is here today. We think it is important. We think it's important that we are here at this conference to celebrate Gullah Geechee culture, to share our knowledge, and most importantly, to listen. And so that's my story. I'll stick to it. Thanks.
We will hear now from Dwight McInvale, Director of the Georgetown County Library, who's going to share with us what's going to happen to the Murals Inlet recordings when they arrive at the Waccamaw Library.
Well, thank you very much. I wish that we were going to get the actual recordings. We would take really good care of them. But we are a small library system, and of course we're just down the road, and we are looking forward to providing increased access to the Library of Congress's website, and also to Gullah Geechee cultural heritage materials, through educating people how to utilize the internet to better access those materials. In addition, I would hope that the family, the Knox family members who are here, might be amenable to our interviewing them about memories of their family in a way to bring up to date the Knox family legacy. And I really appreciate your being here today and what your ancestors did to make this collection possible. And Dr. Eric, I hope you will help to facilitate that. In addition, we do have a very large quantity of images in the Georgetown County Digital Library. If you're not aware of the Georgetown County Digital Library, you should hop online and put in Georgetown County Digital Library. See, I can repeat things too. And take a look. We have many, many photographs from the beginning of the 20th century that you'll want to access. We also have a wonderful YouTube channel where we have hundreds of oral history videos of folks, all occupations, races, religious persuasions. One of my favorite series we did in 2006, and it was the Gullah artists of Georgetown County. And we actually expanded this somewhat because we had we called it the Low Country Rice Culture Symposium, and we had it at our Waccamaw Library, and it featured the preeminent artist Jonathan Green out of Charleston, and so we were able to videotape him, and we also captured interviews of a number of other people up and down the seaboard that were interested in the art connected to the Low Country. And all of those are on our website. Again, if you go to the Georgetown County Library website, And then down at the bottom, you'll see a YouTube icon. Click on that. You'll find several hundred videos that I think you will enjoy immensely. Now, I did want to take Dr. Eric to task for one thing, and I don't know that this is completely his responsibility. I believe it may also have to do with the repatriation group, but they call it repatriation. It should be rematriation. I'm so sorry. In the Low Country, the Low Country is a lady. It's not a man. And you know the marsh grass. That's the tresses of Our Lady, and these long beaches are her long arms, and of course you know the rivers are her sinuous curves. But you know her language is Gullah, and the music and the folklore are her dreams actualized. So thank you so very much for what you're doing. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and I hope all of you will come to the library, either via its website or in person, to see what we have and to see what we're going to do with these materials. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For our final musical selection this afternoon, we're going to hear a performance of I Listen to the Roll, performed by vocalist Carnell Butler, accompanied by Dr. Eric Crawford, and performed in the memory of Zackie Knox.
To say, as we're performing, I noticed in the first song, I saw one person doing this, and they stopped. Well, you know, we're doing these church songs, people. So as we sing these songs and get going, please just join in the song chorus, please, just a little bit. This is for Zackie.
I was looking for the road, and the road was calling. There's nobody there for the answer for me. I had to answer for myself. I was looking for the grave, and the grave kept my highway. There was nobody there to answer for me. I had to answer for myself. I was looking for the road, and the road kept calling. And nobody there to answer for me. Listen, I had to answer for myself. I'm looking for the grave, and the grave kept howling. Nobody there to answer for me. I had to answer for myself. I had to answer for myself. Oh, in the morning, I had to answer for myself. When the sun goes down, I got to answer for myself. Listen, I got to answer for
you saw the suit, you knew it was going to be good. I want to, this is a very emotional time for me, having heard Lily. By the way, Lily Knox, we believe, was an inspiration for James Baldwin's book and subsequent movie, If Beale Street Could Talk. And I always believe that the ancestors talk to us. And I think Lily and Zaki were saying, it's our time now. It's our time now. I do want to have a representative, if possible, who can speak from the Lily Knox family to come forward and give remarks. Lily, named after Lily. Lily Mazik. The granddaughter of Lily.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank God for being here today, and it's an honor to take place in part in this special event. I am the granddaughter of Richard and Lily Knox. My name is Lily Knox Mazik. I graduated from USC Coastal Carolina College in 1988. I am a retired teacher and the author of 6 children's books. My books were written on character education and of God's love. My goal is to encourage children to become better citizens in society through books. My husband's name is Larry. I'm the mother of 3 children, and I have 3 grandchildren. I have 1 son-in-law, 1 brother-in-law, and 6 brothers. My brother Laverne Knox is here with us today. 5 brothers were married. I only have 1 sister, and she passed away in March of 2018 at the age of 66. My sweet grandmother, Lily Knox, was born on September 2nd, 1902, and she died September 2nd, 1964. So she died on her birthday at the age of 62. Her husband, Richard Knox, died on his birthday in February at age 62. Sounds unbelievable, but it's true. My beloved dad, Richard Jr., died in June of 1990 at the age of 63. My angelic mom passed away in August of 2003 at the age of 70. In other words, I would like to say she made the promise. Her name was Sarah. Right now, I would like to respond to some questions given to me by Brandy Perron, Director of South Carolina ETV, regarding my beautiful grandmother, Lily Knox. Number 1, please tell me a little about your favorite memories of your grandmother, Lily, and what she means to you. Honestly, I don't remember much about my grandmother because I was very young when she passed away. I wrote a book for children titled Granny Was Right. Maybe, just maybe, I remember more than I think I do about my grandmother. You should read the book. I do know that I was named after her, and she was a hard worker. She cared about people, believed in God, and wanted the best for her family. My grandmother had an awesome smile. She instilled the importance of her family in her son and my dad, Richard Knox Jr. For this reason, I will be forever grateful to my grandmother because my dad took very good care of us. He encouraged us to be productive citizens in society. Number 2, did she used to sing to you? If so, what do you remember about her voice? Well, it saddens me to say this, but I don't remember my grandmother singing to me. I can only imagine how beautiful it would have been to hear her sing to me. Her voice was so lovely. Number 3, how did you feel when you found out that your grandmother Lily's songs had been recorded? Well, most of all, it was a nice surprise to hear my grandmother's voice on tape because I didn't remember how it sounded. Okay, now, because of the recordings, I do. Her voice is very pleasing to the ear. We all sing songs in church or wherever, but we're not all recorded. It was wonderful to know that someone found her voice worthy of being recorded. Number 4, how does it make you feel that her songs are part of the Library of Congress's collection? I feel special and proud to know that my grandmother's songs are part of the collection in the Library of Congress. It means her gift from God lives on and on. I wish I had known about the collection sooner than 2018. Number 5, what does it mean to you to have grandmother's music live on in South Carolina history? It means a great deal to me that my grandmother's music lives on in South Carolina history because history is important and interesting. If you understand why and how things were done in the past, then you can make someone's life or a place better and safer. Therefore, if my grandmother's music can help us learn and understand about South Carolina's past in any way, then it should be part of history. Number 6, what is your favorite song of hers and why? I heard my grandmother singing I'm Troubled About My Soul on YouTube for the first time, would you believe it, in 2018. I was amazed by her talent. I can listen to her sing I'm Troubled About My Soul all day. It does something for my state of mind in a positive way. Her music makes me smile. And of course, Hannah and Will did a great job with that song. Number 7, is there anything else you would like to add? I know that my grandmother was good at heart because she taught my dad the importance of taking care of his family. I only remember good things about my dad. He wanted all of his children to get an education, and we did. And there were 8 of us. If my grandmother were alive today, I would thank her for her love. I would thank her for her music. I would thank her for my dad. Thank God for my sweet grandmother, and thank you for listening.
That does not touch you. Oh my gosh. We now have Zachary Knox's son here. Lawrence Knox, if you please come forward.
Okay. What I'm about to say about my dad was that song they were singing this song. I never heard that. And but it sounds just like it. It sounds just like it. And one thing about it, he always would keep us alive and try to follow him. But some of them some of them did, some of them didn't. So just don't hold that against me. So anyhow, while I'm standing here, I think they wrote a book on Lily, Jackie, and so forth and so on. But they only had, Zach and Evelyn had 3 children, 3 girls, and one boy. So I knew that wasn't right. So what I did, I picked up one of the family. You take a look at that if you don't mind. And now what to say about that? 3, had 12 children in it. Back up a little bit. Back So now you know but that's in that book. The last, I mean, in 208. But we're gonna have to get back to the channel. To the channel and let them redo it. So, and anyhow, so far he always, he loved to go fishing. And then he said we didn't have no fish to eat, he'd always go, I mean deep sea fish is what I mean. And the biggest thing about it, he finally got tired of that and he tried to do something else, so he did. He worked for the Eastern down there, and somehow or another they went and bought, he used to drive an old pickup, the old mule and wagon, but the old wagon, mule give out on him, hauling the kids up and down the road into the field and to the farm and back. So they went and got him a power wagon, one of them army power wagons, used to be an army truck, then they got an army power wagon, one with the winch and all that on it. So he pulled up to the store one day, and the people come out there, he sat down and said, Zach, I said, what happened? So you mean you got that many children? You got to get a power wagon instead of the mule? So he said, well, I reckon so. So we just need to take care of it. So anyhow, he would keep us in faith, love, and for number 1, number 2, switch. Remember that. And but I got to the place, then I wouldn't stay home but half the time. So every now and then he had to come hunting. But I'll be down to another family house down there with them. So he come down there one day, so he was gonna whip me back home. So the white guy said, no, they don't bother, I'll take care of it. So he turned around back. So the switch got shorter. So, anyhow, he didn't look me that day, and the next day either. So I stayed there part-time and go to school part-time. And finally, I finally got married and started having kids. And there's been the getting this up, you know, I with me, no kids, then they would take off for the woods. So I made up my mind one night, I said, no, I ain't gonna run that joke no more. And I stopped on the step, sit down on the step and called him. And I'd whip him there. And that can last about 2-3 times. Because I know if they'd went through them woods over there and fall down and break themselves, hurt themselves, bruise up themselves, or break a leg, or arm or something, then it'd been all on me. So I quit that. So we all got started getting along pretty good. So they didn't know the reason for a switch. Right now, so I had eight hands, and so they all of them, I had 4 wing service at one time, and had 1 wing service and 1 working social service at one time. I don't know how to manage to do that. So, as I meant to tell you about the wagon, I believe I did too, yeah. But anyhow, if you wanted to mess the fish, he would have it. And he would, in the morning, on Sunday morning, start everything. We get all the sit in the power there, and we had prayer every morning, every Sunday morning he's there. Then after that, we all go into church, he'd load him up on that power wagon, we'll go. So I think that should take care of it, because somebody else might say.
We're so thankful to have the Knox families here. Let's give them all a hand. We hope that we thank the Library of Congress for being here, Association for Cultural Equity for being here, and Dwight, Georgetown County Library. Thank you so much for also being here. And we thank you all for also coming. Please enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care.